Alrighty. Hello. Anybody watching this in replay? I don't think there's going to be anybody showing up this early, but you're welcome to if you like. We are going to do more coding. So how about I get rolling on that? I thought something that might be kind of nice to do is the VST versions of a bunch of these plugins, because I got to kind of get through the 5 things I have listed up here. And nothing to it but to do it. If anybody shows up, please chat and we'll talk about what's going on. This is not an easy day for me, but more will be revealed if anybody's interested in hearing about it. We could go backwards or we could go forwards. How about going forwards? So here's where we're at the moment. This is the VST of Edge. I have filled in the identity of it in KUnique ID, but I haven't done anything else yet, so. Hey, dude. How's it going? So I need to go into Airwindows, plugins, and Mac AU is where I have the working version of this. If you'd like, I can show it to you. I do have it loaded up. This is me working it up. If I do that, I can't see chat. That's no good. This is me adapting it to VST form in the way that we do. Let's make all these windows much smaller. How about? Hard enough to see anything without that, so. Yeah, fair enough. I'm resting from music making. Turns out what I did was I did a long burst of sort of Chris style music. And just got really into that to the point where I was duplicating my effort and repeating myself. And so I started trying to do something else. And I did 2 days of trying to do psytrance, namely using the techniques that I've already got, but having a basis for the music that was a loud, aggressive, clicky kick, and then 3 quick bass notes in a tight little cycle. That's the psytrance thing. Unfortunately, what happened to me with that was there was a couple of things that happened. One of them was I was using more like a rock instrumentation for the drums, and that meant that the kick didn't have the type of clarity you need for psytrance. And 2, I was using sine waves and really round tones for the bass, and my bass was about an octave too low. And I was using a zero cross filter, a zero cross VCA, for varying the amplification of the bass. That meant that it didn't get fired at exactly the same instant each time. It was going to fire every time the waveform underneath it crossed 0. So that sort of humanized it, but you don't want to humanize psytrance. Psytrance is meant to be very mechanical. And yeah, there were no filters or anything in there, and I couldn't begin to tell you. I have no idea what it is I did. I got a lot of work to do and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, one of the things I'll be doing is very likely coming up with like video streaming colors based on the kinds of stuff that I do. So if I get back into rock instrumentation rather than just diving into the electronic stuff, I'll probably come up with a stream color for that. Right now I got blue is ambient / ambient / DNB, whatever. Those seem to be good blends for me. And this green, although it doesn't actually register as green as I would have thought, but this green is the coding streams, and so I'm doing that. I'm not sure whether it helps me code or not, but it's a different look. And then I'll have red, and also somebody yesterday suggested purple for sound design, and that's doable. I could do that. But speaking of doing things, I need to do this. H-file. So I need to have this match, and it does. And then I need to define the variables. So I'm going to need these, because I got a whole bunch of filters in here. Oh, and I should check how many. Looks like I have 5 parameters in Edge. I'll show you what Edge does momentarily. So that's the same as it was before. So here's what I do. I'll copy this over, and I believe this may give me a stereo biquad. If it doesn't, I'll soon find out why. It should. Look at there. That says L and R, so I think that should be giving me a stereo biquad. And that's everything I need there. So next I need to go to Edge CPP and also duplicate some of these things. And again, I got to get this off of the bottom of the screen so I can see chat if it's there. And stop putting my hands in the way, because my hands are the same color as your text. So there we go. By the way, colored lighting is interesting. Check this out. This is, oh God. This looks like the blackest pajamas ever, right? I'm doing the streaming in black pajamas. Guess what? It is actually sort of red lumberjack looking that's been dyed slightly blacker. But on a day with green light, you literally cannot see anything other than it being totally black. Color and lighting are very interactive. Hey, Symplectomorph, how's it going? Let's see if we can't get back into the swing of this. Edge has all of the things starting out at 0. Is that right? Or is that... Oh, no, that's the VST. The reason it's doing that is I haven't looked up what they're supposed to be. Let's do that now. You will... It's not a global Patreon thing. I stopped it because it started diminishing and going away. And also I had it tied to earning money for buying gear and making plugins out of it. And it feels to me as if that project really failed. So what I need to do is come up with something that I can do with the amount that I saved up while doing that. And that could easily be... people were asking for an ASR 10. I could probably get an ASR 10. I would ask folks, do you need me to do that? Would you like me to do that? Because if you do like me to do that, that's been paid for under the agreement that I made on the Patreon of what I was saving up for and why. But I have to kind of move on that now because it's not going to budge. I'm not going to get, like the way things are going, I'm not going to get to the EMU SP12. I'm not going to get to the antique hip-hop box. That would require like $7,000-8,000. I'm not going to get there. I'm not going to be able to earn that much money. So it's more a question of like, what should I do now? And another thing that I'm actively interested in doing, but I'll do this on my own initiative, is I'm interested in picking up a Mackie 8 bus, because I'd like to make console 8 effectively be the Mackie 8 bus. But no, it's not a global Patreon thing. So let's see. What we're doing right now, apart from making all these windows smaller so that I can see what people say. 0.1, 1.0, 1, and 1 is what this defaults to. So my next thing, since I have the 5 controls, these are already going to be set up to use 5 controls, and so that's fine. And now I have to update these. Gain, low pass, hey, dry wet is already set correctly. And then the next part is looking here. I'm going to be copying this over, but I'm also going to need to make it into stereo. These appear to be all 0 to 1, so we'll run with that. That's what it is here already. Oh, when you said a ballad song about old memories, I thought you meant it had lyrics. That would be your interpretation of what that meant. Edge CPP. So now I need to open this and start making this be correct. Yeah, I couldn't begin to tell you what that is. I think it might have been up on the SoundCloud at some point. I'm really not sure. You'll forgive me. This is slightly rough times at the moment, but it doesn't stop me from streaming, so I'll do my level best to keep doing my work. And we'll see where that goes. Because that's about where my brain is at the moment, I'm going to need to put this. Oh, I need 2 IIR samples, don't I? Yes, I do. So we moved on to this too soon. There's a place up here. It's harder to see with leaving room on the screen so I can see chat. I mean, if I look over there, I can't see chat either. Yeah, this needs to live here. And I need 2 of these. There, that is now set up. That's the same thing I have here. But I need to go back to here because I need these to be defined as left and right too. You'll note that the fixed biquad doesn't need that happening because it already contains left and right versions. And there we go. Yeah, like I said, I'll try to do other songs. This is where I say this has left and right versions. It's designed to contain the buffers within itself that will do left and right versions of these things. And now we need to move down here. because I think we're finally on to edge process. You know something? I've decided I'd like to have these the other way around. The one I'm working on is on this side, and the one I'm drawing from is on this side. So edge CPP. On old versions of macOS, you cannot grab the edge of the window. You have to grab the corner to resize. So we need to make this match. And once I've copied this over, I'll tell you what is going on and how it works. Once I have it sorted out, I'll copy it over to the other version of VST. So we've got this, but get parameter keyparam1 becomes A. Anybody who is very clever at programming is going to find me extremely stupid today. Get parameter 2 becomes B. But anybody taking a nap to my voice is going to find it very soothing because I have nothing today. I'll be very chill sounding. IR mount POW C3 and outpad becomes D. And what becomes E? That's actually what was in the template. And here we've got stuff being defined by cutoff, because cutoff in Edge, this is not simply about defining it as what sample rate would require for. This is not simply going to set a cutoff at either 20K or 25K, which is the maximum setting, or whatever. Oh, I do need to adjust that though. Look at that. This should be showing up in blue if it was the correct formulation for it. So since it is not, I have fixed it. And it's set up so that if you're running at a sample rate where you can't reach 25K, it'll pick something a little bit lower. And if you made the cutoff super duper low, it will keep it from being so low that it's just breaking the biquad filters. And IIR amount, that is a high pass, because this whole thing ends up acting like a mini-staged version of like density or drive. Yeah, I don't know whether the songs are available anywhere. I can't do anything for you about that right now. I can't believe that the songs are that important anyhow, so it doesn't really matter. The fix, reso, and these things should just work. So at this point, I would call this ready to go. And we're going to copy it over to the other. See that it says process replacing and it's running on float? Down here, we have process double replacing and it's running on double, but the rest of it is the same. And there it is, so that's good enough for now. And the final thing we need to get from the original one is what we have under here. Firstly, let's compare it a little bit to see whether they look like they're the same. Edge is using a dry sample that is not Okay, let's run with that. There. Now those match, except for they're in stereo. So now what I do is copy this over and make it work in stereo form. Some of this I get to reuse for Dirt. Dirt is a related plugin. Yeah. No, Mel, I don't really want anything today, but we will see. Whenever I do, those people just give me a load of crap on the internet. And that gets tiring, and there are days that I'm more down with dealing with it and days where I don't really have the life force to deal with it. So since I don't have the life force to deal with any of that right now, I'm not going to. I'm going to make plugins and not concern myself with that so much at the moment. But yeah, several days ago I played guitar, and in fact, although I hated everything that I did, all the sounds I was getting were exactly what I wanted. That was getting there. Yeah, coding session today. So it's like I got to find different contexts for all these things. It's the sort of thing I might end up having to do a lot of in different ways. But for the time being, and let me see now. Let's left-rightify this. Actually, let's left-rightify this a different way. It might not really make much of a difference, but I can make it so that it's working with the lefts and rights in a little cluster over here, and then in a little cluster over there. And if I interleave them, I feel like if the compiler is not clever enough, it might think that it has too many temporary variables. It should be able to do a bunch of stuff on, for instance, L. That was supposed to be caps lock. Oh, whatever. L. I'm not sure what you mean by magic values. Oh, that? Come to think of it, there's not a lot of reason for that to be that. I think what that's going to be is... actually, let's make that be considerably smaller. And likewise in the actual audio unit. And I'll tell you why. My denormalization stuff is no longer trying as hard to get as close as possible to what real denormalized numbers would do. Instead, they're gating a little bit more obviously, which hopefully will clean stuff up. But the 23 and 17 up above as the main denormalization is causing the plugin to do denormalization that sounds more like the plugin has a analog noise floor that's just about like 50 dB lower than any real analog noise floor ever would be. I can strike a balance between what technically denormalization would require and having all of the channels be just a tiny bit live with the background noise in there. Oh, hang on a second. Something important has just happened. Hi, I'm back. It's family troubles, and I was like picking, getting a text and seeing what's going on. I was scared my significant other had not survived the night. That was very frightening. Guybrush, I'm not sure if you're still there. If you are, hey, analog would certainly never really be zero as far as denormalized numbers are concerned. It's way, way beyond that all the time, always. Like a simple resistor would be larger than what a denormalized, probably even a denormalized floating point number would be, much less a denormalized double. And if you mean changing the way it's labeled, naming those magic values, sometimes that's stuff that's worth doing. We sometimes do that. Like I was doing that in the biquad filters. Hang on. I don't know if you're even there anymore, so it's like, say hi in chat if you are. Hello again, everybody. And man, if you tell me how to pronounce that name, I'll try to pronounce it. But thank you for all of the emojis. I can't pronounce those either, but they are appreciated. Here, hang on a second. So yeah, I'll get back to the DSP coding momentarily. The significant other is heard from. She had not died. She has been really sick and is in a lot of pain and fell asleep where previously she had not been able to sleep at all because of the post-COVID and a bunch of bad stuff. And randomly fell asleep for like 12 hours. So, oh man, I was losing my mind. Oh my God. You don't want to know what I was thinking, but yeah, that was real challenging. But the actual sleeping part is all good. And yeah, that is, I am feeling a lot better than I did at the beginning of the stream. Apologies for jumping away from, well, no apologies. Sometimes if you were a family man, that's what you do. I could have stopped the stream, but, we'll get right back into it. And she was like, oh, no, go back and talk to your peoples. So that's what we're going to do. And here is what I was working on, namely this stuff. And we'll build the audio unit version of that. And I think I've got it copied over into, looks like it, yeah. So I was just in the middle of filling this out when I discovered with the text message that she hadn't randomly died thousands of miles away from me where I could do nothing about it. Woof. So we can resume this stuff. I was just talking about some of the choices I was making here. Namely, we scaled this back so that it will gate the IAR sample a little bit sooner than it would otherwise have done. And we're making these be left and right, and it's doing this it's rather than interleaving each kind of thing, like LR, 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 I'm doing all L and all R. Well, this is an older compiler, that's the thing. Newer versions of the C compiler could possibly figure out that I was interleaving things and then break them out into let's do all the input sample L operations at once and then do all the input sample R operations. But this is an older machine, so it's possible that this is actually making sense, me choosing to do this. I'm trying to do the work with these variables pretty much all at once. And some of this, like when it says 1.0 minus IIR amount plus input sample L times IIR amount, the reason we're doing that is because in modern computers, you're probably better off doing extra math rather than having extra variables. You don't necessarily want to have to store lots of different kinds of variables in all different kinds of places. You probably would prefer to manufacture something that's going to always be 1.0 minus IIR amount out of math, then set aside another variable just for holding that value in the belief that you can just look it up and it's faster than doing the math. In modern computers, it's probably faster to, oh, hang on. And we just closed the wrong thing, but that's okay. I had the Finder window and I was mistaking it with what's underneath. We're good. Back we come. Here we are. Let's widen this out and look at it in a little narrow slot so that we can still see chat. I'd like to still be able to see chat. You can't see me, but oh well. And if we can figure this stuff out, we'll have the VST working and we can test it. And then you'll hear what this is. Is there a specific reason why we don't use an array for input sample L and R? Well, remember, float inputs and float outputs is already an array. This is a pointer to sample frame size of an array, and we're just reading them in this way, like in 1, in 2, out 1, out 2. That's effectively an array. So what we're doing is we're referring to these and incrementing them. And I'm pretty sure I get what you say, but I'm not doing it that way because that's like extra levels of complication. It's similar to if you were to go like, okay, we have the mono version of it, and so let's now make the whole plugin be a kind of shell that calls a smaller mono plugin inside itself and passes all of the variables or values that we're working with on the stack. Like, you do a lot of that stuff and it starts to get into sort of C++ type areas, modern programmer stuff, where what they're doing is going like, let's make all of this happen with as few characters as possible. And they go, okay, I can just call this twice with different values on this thing by wrapping it all, and everything gets wrapped in everything else, and you wind up with a situation like modern web browsers where drawing a character on the screen is 80 different subroutines of different kinds of things. So I'm doing this manually, and I think people will be able to see fairly quickly the result of it, especially once, like we're doing here, I'm moving over to running a double precision bus rather than the long double bus. The long double bus, I'm increasingly feeling, is not helping in any significant way. I'll save copies of the plugins for people who want them, but I don't think it's helping in a significant way, but it is masking how efficient these plugins can be. The way that I'm coding them, it's not necessarily making the code nicer to look at. It's the nearest thing to assembly language that I can get while still making stuff that makes sense in modern machines. But like, the fact that my stuff runs at all, much less runs as efficiently as it does, using a long double processing bus and long doubles for all of its variables is really quite something. I think we'll get substantial boosts in efficiency without actually losing anything in sound quality. And I've been told that before, but I don't have to listen to people saying like, you don't need to have that much resolution. Usually I'm like, yes, I do. And then I just won't listen. But running the math on it kind of opened my eyes a little bit as far as that's concerned. But the reason I'm not using an array for input sample L and R is because I should be able to make it run more efficiently this way. And that's the reason. So here what we've got is a need to what I'm wondering is, do I want to do an outsample L and R, or do I just not want to do that? I feel like maybe I just don't want to do that. Let me sort of double these up. And I mean, this is this is Xcode version 3.26. It's very proud of the fact that it's 64-bit. That was new back in the day. It's from no later than 2010, and it might not be that good at optimizing. Modern Xcodes are probably going to be much better, but I can do it this way, and I think the VSTs will also be helped, depending upon whether the Microsoft and Linux compilers they use are going to be sophisticated enough to do all of this stuff. We shall see. But for now, let me just boop. And we're going to walk through this process a couple of times. And I need to do it all very accurately. This is the kind of thing where doing this is stopping me from thinking about more difficult things. And we're going to go L. And then where it says fix SL1, I'm going to be changing that to R in the other version. But I'll try to identify where it needs these. And I don't need to change outsample there. So there's actually not that many changes here. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's one change in each line because we don't need to have outsample in left and right form. We can just keep reusing it. It's applying it to the input result immediately. Then we reuse it again, but this time it's R. Same deal. But this time I'll need to go through and change some things in. As you can see, it is showing up and saying, hi, this is also a variable that we know about. If it was, say, T, that's not turning blue on the screen. But R is defined as a value that the compiler knows about. And then I find another. If I miss one of these, everything will go wrong. But I don't believe I have missed any of them. And there we are. That is an initial filtering curve. And I'll have 5 of these to go through. And it is now left and right. Likewise, this needs to be left and right. Edge uses the rawest and most primitive form of hard clip. That being a simple logic function. As such, it relies entirely on the filtering to get it to sound better. But it's more efficient than running a process, much less a complicated process like a sine or something like that. Dirt is very similar to this, so much so that I might actually be able to copy some of this code over. But it uses the most CPU efficient version of tube, which is a very, very fat, distorted tube sound. And that's how it does its distortion, but everything else is essentially the same. Same deal of, rather than do the plugin that says, this is the Airwindows effect plugin, and then everything is a subcategory in it. So you load instances of it, and your mix has 15 copies of a compressor that it is not using, 15 copies of a filter that it's not using, etc., etc. You should be loading up the code for only exactly what you need to make happen, and that's how I do these plugins. People don't necessarily always like that, but that is how I do these plugins. Onwards, we're going to do this again. So here we are with the L's. And that actually covers it. That's all I needed to do to make that one be a stereo effect. Now I have to do the R's and also include, I'll tell you what, I'll just these here are literally those there. I need to update each time and make sure that I've got them, but I don't necessarily need to do them. Like I can do the input sample R. By the way, if I miss any of those, it'll throw an error and I'll be able to see where it is. It's okay if I don't get it right the first time. I have to be comfortable with that, because the way this kind of thing works, especially if I'm developing it the first time, not so much when I'm porting it to VST like I'm doing, but when I'm developing it the first time, being able to keep really close track of what I'm doing with all the details is often less important than whether there's some major change I have in mind or some change in the sound that I have to be focusing on. So I'm more likely to do stuff like this. And then I need to do the R. So I'll follow this little shape here. This is where those variables live. And then I need to go back up here to change these bits. And the trick about that is that if I get this wrong, it'll screw everything up in weird ways. But it'll be a little more tricky to understand until I spot where I've missed updating a bit. But that's why I have it organized the way that it is. It's kind of, oh, I forgot to do a thing. I have this marked L and R, so let's do that too. That's only a comment, but comments are important too. And now that one is updated as well. By the way, you'll be interested to hear what this sounds like. It is indeed rather bright, but the idea is I've designed this as acting like almost a guitar amp effect, but it's somewhat idealized. It's kind of optimized. And the way that this interacts with the really hard clipping combined with constantly filtering all the time is that it has a distinctive quality to the cutoff. Like if you're doing a super bright distortion thing, you would maybe have the cutoff be just supersonic. It would be around 20K. But if you were doing a guitar amplifier voicing, you might have it tuned down to something like, I don't know, 13K, 8K or something. And that's going to change the way the hard clipping is behaving hugely. And you'll hear what I mean when I demonstrate it, which I'll be doing as soon as I have this work finished and compiled a VST version of it. So back to the grind of the same deal. L. Jesse, you're quite welcome. This is definitely another one of those weird little coding streams where I'm not particularly clever today, but it's because I was worried about somebody that I love who turns out not to be in danger after all. So there's much rejoicing there. And so my emotions are rebounding a little bit off of the very heavy mood that I was in earlier where I really thought something was wrong. And but my brain is completely distracted by all of it. She was very much like, no, go and do your thing, don't think about me. Yeah, likely story, of course I'm going to be thinking about her, but that's fine because we're just porting something to VST. And as such, as long as I remember to make these L and R versions be correctly made. Do I have a clip after the... Oh, neat. Okay. I do not have a clip after the final filtering stage. Good. That will help it have the right tone. Otherwise, if I had the hard clip after the final filtering stage, there would always be just a little touch of like buzziness in there, no matter what you did. That is the good choice, and we will stick with it. Oh yeah, by the way, much like how I've done Hypersonic, and I'm going to be putting out Hyperson X today, I may have to do the signed versions of the plugins before doing that. I don't remember whether I've got them done. I suppose I could look that up and find out. I think I don't have them done, though. I have to walk through that. But much like I've been doing Hypersonic and Hyperson X, this is based on Hypersonic, so this is a 7-stage processing. And that is very useful for this particular calculation. Humans are terrifying creatures, frankly. The kinds of stuff we can get up to are really, like, very disturbing, but that's why you have to remember you don't know everything. And sometimes I want to say you don't know anything. You don't know everything. So if stuff seems really alarming and weird, especially if you were an intelligent person, your brain goes to all these places where you're trying to figure out what happened. How do I construct my world to explain what has happened? And you come up with these wild explanations that aren't necessarily justified by what actually happened. So you've got to be able to hang on to, that world of not knowing, that world of not understanding, and being like, I don't know what just happened. That's the challenge, really. That's sometimes a lot of work to be able to carry off. To be sitting through a tense or dramatic situation where stuff seems to be going terribly wrong and not jump to conclusions, that's expert mode right there. There's our right settings for E. Right settings for R. Looks to me like those are all correct. Yep. And we'll do this one. Again, we've got 7 instances of this. But the bright side is that even though this is a really primitive clip, it actually has a surprisingly slick, juicy sound to it, which you will hear once I finish making it and test it. And I might have that be my plugin for the day and just take a few, lie down and chill for a second, because like I said, the family stuff had me very worried and distressed today, and it turns out to be a false alarm. I shouldn't have worried. Or at least I suppose it's possible that I couldn't have worried, but it's human to get anxious and think that a thing happening, that you've interpreted it and you know what is going on. And there is another R. When you have this kind of stuff and there's lots of it, you can do it overall find and replace on things, but you have to do it very cleverly. This is not one of those cases where it would be possible to do that very cleverly. And the commenting. Commenting does matter. Seems like we've been doing this forever because there's 7 of them. Yeah, I may very well decide once I've got this tested and finished, I may just, unless people have lots of questions and need my help with plugin support, I can do that. But otherwise, and especially if we don't have lots of people in chat, always comment in chat because I can't see how many anybody is. I'll just, I don't know, go make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something and breathe. And look, we're almost done. And I'll get ready for porting Hyperson X to signed Mac and AU and VST, at which point I can make my video for posting it, and that should go nicely. So people were already thinking that's what it was. People thought that hypersonic was literally Hyperson X, and they were like, why doesn't it have a control for picking which one? And it's because that's all of them. That's a 7. I made a 7 filter stack that uses less CPU than the 5 filter stack that ultrasonic was. fact, in some cases, maybe it'll use less CPU than Hyperson or Ultrason X in the long double formulation. Depends. Like all of these little calculations for the existing ones have been done at 80-bit hyper detail floating point, and that's going to continue to be available for everything past last week, because I will make a point of backing up the code, putting it somewhere where people can get it, backing up all the plugins, putting all the plugins where people can get them, and labeling them clearly like, these are the old long double instances. I'm going through and rehacking them all to be double precision. And they'll then be like 3 to 5 times faster. But if you want the hyper resolution version of those things, you can get it from these collections and just drop it in where the other one is. There'll be nothing to mark which one it is, but that should be a thing. One of the things I'm hoping to do is the stuff that I use for my live streams is now, what with the 16 inputs and everything, running to about 60-70% total CPU usage on the desktop machine that I'm using in Bespoke. I've got that much going, and it's like 2 different reverbs and compressors, and everything is enabled and on. If I start using Console 7 Cascade on drums or whatever, it starts to jack it up to 80% CPU usage. So what I want to do is measure what that's doing, then swap out all of the plugins that I'm using, which is sort of the basics for a console and my monitoring, etc. chain. Swap those out with double precision bus, and then run with that and see how much of an improvement I get, because it might drop it way, way, way down. Because, of course, long double needs dithering to go to the double precision bus on some forms of VST or whatever. But if you're processing everything on its own internal double precision bus, and that's working, then you don't need to dither to what you're already at. So it's still present for all the 32-bit buses. But, which would also be the case for instance, search. But if you're running on like a VST host that has a double precision bus, you don't even need to run that code anymore. You get to leave it out completely, because the bus is the same as the Airwindows bus. It is the same as the full bucket software synthesizer bus. It's the high-res bus. So fix G, our last thing here. And if I don't need to run that, then I'll need to run it if I'm using that variable as like denormalization. There are still things needing to use it with, but I wouldn't need to do the actual dithering because it wouldn't be going from a long double bus. Instead, it would just be running the denormalization at the place where it otherwise would have been, just for the purpose of being able to use it as a random number, such as in the denormalization stuff. Anyways, almost done. Input sample R. And I will show you what this is, and then I will go and rest my weary head and take some deep breaths and settle down. Fix G. And I'll be back again tomorrow, because tomorrow is Monday, and I'm still down for doing coding Mondays. That means it's 3 days in a row, and I'll be doing a lot more coding in this way that I'm doing it. Like, if I'm able to, I have designs on getting trading up the M1 laptop and seeing how that works, and I'm doing my level best at it. If I do that, I may also be able to live stream that stuff. And if I did that, I could very easily wind up able to plug that straight into the ATEM and composite using that which could be quite interesting. It could be a very high, like it would look a lot better than this, put it that way. And let's see, comments. And then this needs to be in stereo too. And there we are. And that's where we increment this, which is actually an array that's being supplied to the processing. And this is where you put the output into the output array. It processes the whole buffer and then uses it for whatever else it wants. And so now we're going to expand that downwards. Like I'm having to shrink the size of the window to be able to put this on screen properly. But this should be what I basically need. From here to here. And this is the bit I was telling you about. So I believe I moved that, but I think I can handle that. And of course, we're making this be a double precision bus too. I should ask the guy in Bespoke if he's running, or look at the code, because I'm compiling my own versions of it. And there we are. That should be enough. And again, if we're already running a double precision bus, we're not going to be dithering to itself. That becomes meaningless. We want to take the raw output. So this FBD stuff ends up being just the pseudo-random process. And we're doing that in stereo. And the reason we're not just throwing it away is because we do also have a dither noise thing, which is this. And that also means we have two noise sources that we can use. And so that's nice. It's this stuff up here. If we have to go to 32-bit, that's where we can dither between floating point mantissa values. And so there we are. Oh, the one funny side effect is we could leave that and then have the final summing or whatever be on a long double bus if we had a reason to do it. Like if you wanted to blend the double precision end result of the calculation with the double precision drive value in such a way that the combining of those was on a long double bus, you could do that a little more cleanly. It wouldn't be nearly as tough as doing all this biquad stuff. Here, let me move this out of the way so I can see no explosions in the code. Well, we'll find out. Yeah, there's emojis in the code, yep. I think Apple currently does, that's something they have in Swift, right? That you have emojis in the code. Let's see if it worked. Looks like it worked. Let's see if it sounds right now that we have been able to run it. There we are. Build. Release. I'm going to scooch these over so that I have a place to put the VST. And then if this was in fact the right thing, this goes to the Mac VST folder. right there. And that's where I get the VST files for making the Windows and the Linux and the signed versions. And now let's find out. And yeah, if this worked, then we'll call it good. Also, I'm interested in digging into this because what I've been doing is I've been doing a lot of stuff on the Music Jam days with Amen Break. And this is specifically done to lay down a drum beat that is best thing that I can do tone-wise. And it's over the Amen Break blasting in my headphones. And the idea is that I can loop bits of this as long as I can find moments that are actually grooving tightly enough that they can be used. So I don't actually have to have it all good. It doesn't have to sustain. I just have to be able to grab breaks out of it. So bits of that are basically garbage, but that's me attempting to do an Amen style break. There will be moments that sound good and moments that don't. For instance, if I was to loop this, and say zoomed in nicely, eventually what I'll be doing is grabbing this and making pre-designed loops of just this kind. But what I'll do right now is zero it in to those kick samples and ideally, if you were constructing breaks out of clips like this, as long as you picked a moment where I wasn't stumbling all over the drums and playing wrong, you'd also be able to do the same kind of stuff that you would do in the Amen Break. And that is the hope of this, except for that it's recorded at 96K with good microphones and an API preamplifier and the miking system that I worked out. And of course, you could also make weird little subjams. None of those are good, though. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to get anything useful out of that, but the idea is that if I picked correctly enough, I would be able to get something useful out of some of these bits. But what we were doing was testing out Edge. So let's do that. Firstly, and I've been doing so much that I don't even have it in the recent effects. Firstly, let's go and open up the audio unit version. And it is very similar to like Macadie or whatever, in that the gain is 0.1 for Unity. But if you distort it, you get this. If you distort more, you get this. And we've got our low pass and high pass. But for now, I want to see how this compares to the DSP version. So let's open up the VST version. First of all, see if it loads, and then see if it sounds the same as that when I set it likewise. Edge. 0.5 is what I'm going to want, or as close as I can get. Oh, I can get very close indeed. Does it sound the same? Back to audio unit. I'm going to say that does. And now with this amount of distortion, if I do high pass, and that's our nasty ass digital distortion but filtered. That's 25K. But we can also do the low pass. So the way that the distortion hits it, you're getting a kind of resonant quality on the edge of it because it's just the way it's interacting. And we can go quite low, although it does cause thumps in the output if we yank it around. So I would advise against people doing that, but I've left it at this because I thought that it would be useful. You should be able to do subtleties that way. We can fully high pass it and then sweep it. So yeah, there's edge. It is a nasty, heinous digital distortion, but it sounds strangely non-digital because of the way that it's stacking the filters. And then if I was to do the same thing with the VST, I should get about the same results, and it should do likewise, like this. You don't want to bump it around here because it can peak out rather hard. High passing it this way means we're hearing nothing but the cutoff, basically. And then, cutting off the gain means we start to get a result that can start to sound like a guitar amp. But it's a particular style of guitar ampy sound because the clipping is so hard. It's like a transistorized one. So if you were using something like this, you could get a guitar sound not unlike Yes's Relayer. But you'd probably want to run it through some kind of, I wonder if I have anything that will do this. I don't think I do yet, but no. Some of these, like this one, doesn't run on modern computers. Xism is like a 32-bit or something. Do I have a cabs? Yes, I do. Well, let's see whether we can... I don't think I have this in VST form, but if we did... Oh, wait, I have to stack them. Never mind. I can do that, but I can do it like this. FX stacks, new. What I'd really want to do is get a nice cabinet sample and use that. However, I don't have that right now. But nevertheless, although I don't have a nice cabinet sample, I have my cheap old version of doing that. And so what I can do is essentially I can pick something off a cab that sounds kind of like a speaker cab, even though it doesn't really. And the way this interacts, is it hopefully sounds a little bit like a guitar amp would. Maybe I should put this out. I mean, it's not good, but... But it was a thing anyhow. Might be doable. We can work on that next coding stream, or let me know. Like, would you want this effect? Going from this, which is basically the same thing as... No, even then it's not. But then you start bringing in a truncated convolution impulse here, and then a low frequency boost. And adjust the low pass and high pass on the amp section. Until you have an effect that sounds kind of like what a guitar amp would. You know, my sorrow is that I do not have a guitar sound to go into this. So I'm running a drum sound into it anyway, because why not? We all Trent Reznor today. And you wind up with this sort of thing, where it's a combination amp sim and cabinet sim. Although, honestly, this is not as good a cabinet sim as a real cabinet sim would be, but this is what I was doing back in the day. And you do get to kind of steer it around a little bit. So I think this would be like your Plexi stack. This would be your JCM 800 kind of thing. And this would be your Mesa Dual Recto. I got a bass amp, a small combo, and a large combo. So that'd be like a twin, and that'd be a little bitty like Princeton or something. And yeah, I know you don't want to hear it on the drum, but that's what I've got here. One of the things I can try to do before we catch up next, we can resume this tomorrow and I can add another thing to the stack. Would you like me to do cabs? I know I have not yet done cabs, and it looks as if I can do at least the AU version of it fairly straightforwardly, so maybe we should be doing that on Monday. Seeing as I am now I'm starting to put out Edge and Dirt, which can do this thing, and people have been wanting like guitar stuff from me. So it's not really, but it's a start, and I can go from there. And on that note, I'm going to say it looks like we have the VST coded. And so what I'm going to do is catch up with you folks tomorrow, and we will continue to do this Airwindows plugin coding thing, and either do more VSTs, or we could start doing that version of cabs and bring that out. Because, yeah, it might not be perfect. Here, you should see the code in it. It's hilarious. Check this out. So, Option drag that over so that we can keep it. That'll go here. So get a load of how messy this is. The header file has 6 controls and a complicated little arrangement on the AU for a pop-up menu. And everything else is real messy. It's got the old oversampling, except for it seems to go even beyond that. I'd be wanting to keep that. It's got a couple of different buffers. It would need to be run as undersampled, because what you heard is not going to be correct. You heard it at 96K, so everything was ramped up. And this stuff has to be designed this way. This is back when I was putting register in these things, which is not really needed. And the guts of the code looks like this. So that's just ugly. It's a good thing that I can do the undersampling by pasting stuff into just above and below these things, because this desperately needs the undersampling. But there's no way I can go back into this and adjust any of it. This is just like read-only. I mean, it's just write-only code. And then we've got this stuff, which I would have to kind of keep as it is, because this was weird. There's no messing with it right now. This is the old demo. This was before I was putting out free plugins. These were all $50 a pop. And yeah, and I'm not even, I'm not sure why I'm doing this. And there's no dry wet or anything. It's just, yeah. That's messy. But we can have a whack at it. If you'd like, we can have a whack at that tomorrow. We'll be doing the same things we were doing on Stereo Chorus and Stereo Doubler and Stereo Ensemble, making it so that it could be run reasonably at 96 or 192K, because currently what you were hearing was not correct at all. All of the tones it was producing were scaled up, doubled. It was at an octave up, so there was tiny little cabinets. And it's amazing it even sounded anything like anything. But yeah, for the time being, if anybody is still here, I will talk to you later, because that's it for the stream for today. I gotta get together the Hyperson X and compile the signed versions of it, which fortunately is just following directions, and make my plugin video for it, and then you can have that. And we'll just sort of keep rolling with things. For the time being, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.